Hello and welcome to the podcast of fringeartculture.com. This podcast aims to enrich our community by focusing on local art and culture. I'm Grant, and this is just a short introduction to part 2 of our interview with Damien Smith, episode 9, part 2. Welcome. To begin with, I need to mention the tremendous amount of support we've received this year during our first year of Fringe Art and Culture. The love and support from all of you this year has made all the hard work worthwhile, and I'm sure that next year will only see our community grow even more. So to all who have taken us up on our offer of getting involved, whether it's reading and commenting on posts or listening, liking and sharing the podcast, thank you. And to everyone else, there's always next year. To all, we hope you have had an enjoyable and stress-free festive season and that all of your wishes for the next year come true. One last thing, for anyone who saw the pictures from our live event and wished you could have been there, keep your eyes out for the live recording of the event that will be posted early in the new year. Thank you again to everyone who made that event possible. Without any further ado, we have for you the remainder of our interview with Damien Smith. Enjoy.
You've collaborated a little bit over the years.
Yeah, not too much. I suppose I have here and there, and the process is normally followed. One of the artists create part of it, get it, a half, 2/3 done, pass it over. I prefer not to get any context around it so that I can interpret it with fresh eyes and think about what I'm going to inject into it. Whether it's working with what they've created or putting a foreground layer in that adds another element to it.
Yep.
But then, I've seen a lot of artists that do work quite a lot in collabs these days. Prime example would be Johnny Arnold and Sherry Strong. Their styles where Sherry does the more like the graphite, nostalgic portrait sort of drawings, and then Johnny comes in with his graph style and adds a bit of pop and colour to it. And because they're so synchronised in their relationship, their collaborations just turn out beautifully. And in my mind, it adds an extra dynamic that they can't achieve as an individual artist.
Yeah. Which
is really interesting to think that.
Yeah, that would be a rare thing, I suppose, because then it's almost like you can't go away from that. I mean, you can to a degree, but then without that extra element.
Because they still create their, Johnny still does his portrait stuff, his graph painting and stuff, and Cherie still does her, she does a lot of charcoal drawings on recycled papers and stuff like that. So they do beautiful works individually, but then combine the two together and it creates something unique that they can't create themselves. Yeah. And because their styles are so contrasted, then you get that variation in it that one artist isn't likely to have that unless they've got multiple personality disorder.
It's that it creates interest because of how diametrically opposed the elements are.
Yeah. Another one that I heard,
music.
This one was years ago, and it was a US artist. Can't think of the name at the moment, but their focus was urban landscapes. So the buildings, warehouses, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And they did that for years with mediocre success. Didn't really hit the nail on the head. Then they started collaborating with street artists, where street artists would go into their urban design and do a piece of street art on their urban painting. Yeah. And all of a sudden, huge success, like overnight success kind of thing. Just from, taking two, the accessibility of both of those platforms is quite limited. You've got street art, which is very much about installation context. It's pretty hard to buy a wall and take it home kind of thing. And then you've got urban landscape which is limited in the amount of people that's going to interest.
Yeah.
You create this hybrid, and all of a sudden, you've created accessibility that people can actually buy that urban landscape and take it home, but it's now appealing to a much wider audience.
Yeah.
So,
The street art's really kind of boomed in the last little bit.
Well, I think that adding that element into it makes it a little bit more real as well, because street art is around.
Has a narrative, I think, and I think it kind
of says something about the culture in which it's created and
about the city.
And even the act of that collaboration also mimics the act of street art. So the act of taking something that is
an urban space,
it's boring,
Yeah.
and adding some life to it. The same thing is applied in these urban landscape paintings, and it's mimicked what happens in real life with street art into a accessible platform where people can actually take it home, hang it on their wall.
So can you tell us, are there any other struggles that have really you've had to overcome, or you think that there's something you're still needing to overcome as part of being an emerging creative? And I don't know if I really like the word emerging, but
I would probably say that if you look at the different categories, you've got emerging, mid-career and established. So I would probably say that I'm fitting around the mid-career, where I'm selling enough work to say that I sell work consistently. And I've got a bit of a community engagement group and that sort of thing. And the difference being is that from an emerging artist to that point, it's been largely around setting structure for what I do, developing experience around putting together exhibitions, building confidence in asking people for their money. It's a funny one. Nobody has any qualms when you go to the supermarket and you pay money to leave with your groceries, but when people come to your exhibition and they tell you how much they love your painting, it's like, well, you're enjoying it right now. Give me your money and you can enjoy it for many, many years to come. That's how this works. General commerce, it's fine.
Everyone's doing it.
Everyone's doing it. Get on board. The biggest challenges which I'm currently still challenged with are time. So at present I do still work a full-time job. So when you work a full-time job and you're organising exhibitions and you're organising series of works and everything else that happens outside of those spaces, you end up very time poor, and you have to be a bit precious about who you give your time to and how you spend your time. So I guess what I have discovered is, and this is something that I've had to work on over the years, is you need to make a conscious decision that yes, you do want to be a full-time artist. That is the goal. And to achieve that goal, it's not like you can develop skills while you're at your 9 to 5 to continue building. It's you either get a job in the arts industry and let's be honest, get paid very poorly. And then you struggle in a lot of other areas. So my choice was to build a business career where I get paid reasonable amounts so that I can afford to fund the development of my art and
obviously
buy $35 tubes of paint and $5 pencils.
That's right.
Exactly, the experience that comes with being
and other artists I know, other artists that I talk to have chosen the other path where they do jobs where they don't need to invest as much of themselves into it, and consequently they don't get paid as well, and they struggle to buy art supplies. They've got a bit more time and a bit more mental capacity to create the art, but they don't have the resource to purchase quality art resources and create work that people can see the value in. So it's a bit of a catch-22. So the way around it for me is that when you've got friends having barbecues and parties and stuff every weekend, or different social things, or going out for dinner, you just have to be select about what you say yes to.
Yeah.
You know, if it's someone's birthday, then yeah, I'll go along and I'll stay for a couple of hours and socialise and catch up with everyone. If people are just having a barbecue just for the sake of it, just to catch up and hang out, then no, I need to work.
Yeah.
There's this guy, Derek Shivers. He's an entrepreneur, and he started a company called CD Baby in the US. One of the first independent online music sales websites.
Yep.
His kind of concept is it's either no or fuck yeah.
Yep.
And if it's not fuck yeah, then it's no.
Yeah. Yep. And that's, yeah, so you just need to be precious. You know, it's one of those things that it's just not enough hours in the day. You know, that ultimately when I'm creating artwork, I'm really happy.
Yeah.
I'm in the zone. I feel good about what I'm doing. I learn, I experiment. I like the stuff that I produce.
Yeah.
And I'm always wanting to improve and try new things with it. The reality is I don't get that same feeling with my office job. Some people do, and that's great. But art is one of those things that if you're a creative person, it's in your blood, and once you start feeding it, it takes over. There's no escaping it. You either find a way to be creative full time, or you struggle with being miserable 50% of the time.
It's very much like that. You learn to live on 5 or 6 hours sleep a night so that you could
Yeah.
fit everything else in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes, if you're working on a piece and you're on a roll, you've gotten home from work at 6:30, you've started work thinking that you'd spend an hour on it, and you're like, no, I'm really in the zone, I'm making good progress.
Yeah.
So, you stay up most of the night
Yeah.
working on it. You're tired the next day, you're dragging ass for the rest of the week, but it's worth it because
Yeah.
you wouldn't have hit that stride doing just an hour
Yeah.
each evening. So,
Writing is very much the same.
yeah, yeah. And, I often, one of the questions I get asked all the time is, and this is from people that have a slightly creative bone, but they procrastinate and they find excuses not to create. They say, how do you find inspiration? It's like, well, I get inspired when I start creating.
And that's the thing I find, especially with writers, because writers are the best at procrastinating.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I am awesome at it.
Yeah.
But if you do not have a routine where
Yeah.
you said, I'm going to sit my ass in that chair every single day and I don't care if I don't have inspiration, I'm just going to put bloody pen neck, we're just going to put words down on that page. You cannot wait. You
Yeah.
know? And the big thing that because I've been, I started, I think it was when Charlie was little, so about 2011 was when I dedicated a lot of my time to my writing again.
Yep.
And it was that thing, you can't wait, you just have to get in. And even if I did up a timetable of my week, and even if I didn't get to it everevery day,
Yep. You had your allocated time.
I had Thursday night, it was Friday night, it was, all day Saturday, and Grant's been fantastic with, juggling everything, and quite, there's nights where I'm like, I can't cook dinner, I can't do this, I'll get the kids to the bath, and then can you just let me sit down?
Yeah.
It's kind of fallen away while we've started all the Fringe stuff.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, you still do that for me, and there are days where this last post I put up on Fringe took me 2 solid days to write because it was a struggle, and there's a bunch of mental steps that I need to get to get the end product, but I enjoy that process. And as much as I might get frustrated sometimes, but it's very much the same.
Yeah, and I think if you don't have that routine, and if you're not making the conscious effort to get in that space, then you start to get dusty.
And some of the thing is being honest with the people that you love, because if you can't say to them, or ask for the time and be honest with the amount of time you want to commit, and just
pent up resentment. So
exactly,
you don't want that.
and everything, and then everything falls down anyway. So, it's a big thing.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people, if they're not regularly in that space, they'll build up the apprehension towards actually getting in that space, and then they start to build up the fear around it as well of what am I going to do, and
the feel of failure comes in, and all that stuff.
But it's one of those things that shortest way to the end result is just to jump in and then figure it out as
Yeah.
you go, rather than try and figure it out before you jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's. But yeah, back to topic. Yeah, so time. You have to say no. Help is one of the big ones. That there's a lot of resources out there, and how does an artist stand out from the crowd? How does an artist make sales? How do they navigate through online sales? All that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The trouble is there's too much information where they've all got their own agenda or their own spin on it, and no one artist, you know, there's generic rules that apply, but no one artist is 100% the same. We all work in different capacities in different spaces, creating different work that appeals to different people.
Yeah.
So I think it's been challenging and time consuming to try and collate all this information and then sift through it and work out what's crap and doesn't apply to me, what's useful, how do I put that into a plan that I can actually apply to the work that I do.
Yeah.
And that's taken me a long time to figure that out. And then as you're figuring that out, the environment changes, you know, like when we're talking about Facebook and Instagram has evolved dramatically over the last few years. So it's constantly changing, and it's not one size fits all for all artists. So that's been a big one. And then sales, you know, I'll go through peaks and troughs with the sales, and that's largely because I'll take my foot off the pedal with the momentum, and then momentum drops off, and then you have to build it up before you get your sales up to that point again.
Yeah.
And then there's always that struggle of, am I creating work to generate dollars, or am I creating work to make myself happy?
Yeah.
And even though I know the answer, and I've known the answer for years, you still get tricked into that little cycle of, well, if I sell, I know this work's selling, so I'll create work a little bit more like that, and I'll make some money.
Yeah.
But you know that if you create work that you're happiest doing, A, you're happy creating it, and B, people engage. It comes out, yeah, and that's the work that sells. You know, the work that I can look at and say, yeah, that's fucking awesome. I love doing that.
Yeah.
It's everything works in that, and it was a great experience creating, and I didn't create it for anyone else other than myself.
Yeah.
Kind of trick yourself into selling out.
Yeah, and people snap it up. But the ones where you're sort of looking too closely at the influences and who you're creating the works for and that sort of thing, you know, it's like pulling teeth, the process to drag yourself the energy to create it, because it doesn't feel natural. And
Yeah.
you know, that's what art comes from, a place that's part of you, so you can't force it from somewhere that isn't there. So they're probably the three main areas: is the time, the guidance around how to navigate as an artist,
Yeah.
and the sales aspect. You know, making sure that I'm creating work for myself ensures that I'm actually going to sell the work. And then, you know, where you fall into the trap is where people get excited about your art and they say, oh, yeah, we really like it, but we want something like this. And if it gels with what you want to create anyway, then fine. That is the commission that I say yes to.
Yeah.
If it is something that is outside of my scope or ability or something that I resonate with, then, you know, a few times I've fallen down the path of saying, yeah, because, you know, they're saying, yeah, I've got $1,500, I've got $2,000, that I want this, I want it this size, blah, blah, blah. A, they don't really know what they want.
Yeah.
And they're the worst clients to work with, because they
They're
think
hard
they
to
know
please
they're hard to please because they think they know what they want, but they don't really.
Yeah.
And they don't want exactly what I create.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to hit the nail on the head for them.
Yeah.
So now I'm at a position in confidence and comfort with the amount of work that sells, that I can say no, and that's taken me a long, long.
And I guess that's where
journey to
networking would come in, because you'd be able to say, well, I know this person who might be able to help you with that.
Yeah, I always point them in the direction of someone else.
Yeah.
Because an opportunity that doesn't work for me is an opportunity for another artist that I know. But yeah, it's, you know, you have to say no. Because otherwise it's, you know, that's time and effort and resource that I could have been spending on another piece that would sell
Yeah.
and that I would enjoy doing. So, yeah.
Okay, so is there anything that you've done in the past that you wouldn't do again?
No, not really. It's all sort of led to growing and learning, and
Yeah.
you know, you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
So part of what I have been doing as an artist over the last probably 4 years is documenting all my lessons into a bit of a transcript, which I'll eventually sell as a you know, for like $3 as an ebook.
Yeah.
For other artists who want to learn from my journey.
Yeah.
And I've broken it down into all the categories of developing your concept theme, curating an exhibition, critiquing artwork, photographing artwork, documenting,
Yeah.
all those sort of things.
Have you thought about speaking? I know that it's outside the comfort zone and it's not
Yeah.
something, but it's also something that could sell art in the same
Yeah,
way.
that's right. Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you could obviously diversify that and take that as a presentation.
Yeah, and that would be part of the product.
Yeah.
Yep.
Plus, you could also make it a series of small YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Because that kind of bite size chunks of information, people.
That leads to the book, and as you say, it's not one of the things that is 100% natural to me, but it's one of the things that I've acquired the ability to do through my other 9 to 5
So I think you've been quite logical with your sequence and how to create the right space for your art.
Yep.
Which a lot of people don't either have the capacity or the experience, or they've focused on other reasons why they create art and not so much on the business side.
Yep. Yeah. So there's nothing that I wouldn't do again. It's all been towards stuff that has helped me refine my direction, and I do have a strong desire to want to share the stuff that I've learnt, because as an emerging artist, that resource wasn't there for me. We didn't have the technology, we didn't have the access back then. Internet was still a very hit and miss kind of thing back then, so it was all on books and finding out which books to use and which magazines and which subscriptions, and so it just wasn't there. Things I would do again, what's worked really well for me, I think every artist should have an exhibition at least once a year. I think it helps to develop all of those things around sales, business acumen, networking, all that sort of thing. Also helps to give you a focus. So if you say, I've got an exhibition in November, I'll give myself 8 months. So 8 months out, you book the space, you present 1 or 2 works of the sort of work that you're going to put in the exhibition to the gallery so that they can accept or decline, and then spend the next 8 months creating 12 pieces, whatever it might be, with the goal that you then want to sell 30% or more of your paintings on opening night. Setting yourself clear objectives that are going to create a sustainable lifestyle as an artist. Out of those you might then sell 100 limited edition prints at $150 a piece, which would then create your sustainable income for the rest of the year. Some of those works might translate well to t-shirts. So if you sell 500 t-shirts of a certain design, all of a sudden at you might only get $4 or $5 commission per t-shirt, but there's $5,000 that.
But it's also about kind of brand awareness, I guess, to a certain extent. And a lot of artists have mixed ideas about merchandise.
Yes.
And whether it's good or whether it's bad and whether it cheapens things or not. But I think we've gotten up to a point where we need to diversify.
We have, Some of my work will only ever sell as a one-off. Some will sell as a one-off and maybe 10 limited editions. Others might be 100 limited editions, others might be open editions, others would be translated into t-shirts, singlets, that sort of thing, handbags, cushions. so having that variety, so basically you're not limiting yourself to one income stream.
I think a lot of designers are opting for that as well, obviously,
Yep.
because design work is meant for products,
Yeah.
and that builds awareness about what they do and their styles and that kind of thing. It works really well. Okay, so your style, we mentioned this briefly before, so even though you've got different approaches to the way you approach different canvases, whether it be pop art,
Yeah.
you're working with sponges, your fingers with the dripping,
Yep.
fingers without the dripping,
Yep.
the dot work, the foil, the realism and all that kind of stuff, the
Yep.
pencils, they all have a similar sort of feel and
Yeah.
stuff like that to
Yep.
them.
And I think, so feeling is the right thing to go off there. It's that sort of air about the personalities and the subjects, the way they're cropped, framed,
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. All has the same context around it.
Yeah. The horns specifically.
Yeah, so I think we mentioned previously
Yeah.
that, so generally the idea of capturing beauty is to explore emotion.
Yep.
So I feel that, ultimately that is what gives someone their beauty, is their ability to express their personality and their feelings and who they are.
Yep.
And when we conform to other systems that limit our ability to express who we are and feel, then in that context we become ugly,
Yep.
basically.
Yep.
So that's where the focus on beauty has evolved to, and not necessarily just females. It's just been a coincidence that it's largely been female subjects up to this point. I would like to, moving forward, as I create more work, to explore different female, male, different body shapes, sizes,
Yep.
all the rest of it. The horns generally represent their personality. So, for example, antlers might represent more of a sense of wisdom, more of a confidence in around their knowledge. They might be more of a thinker or a philosopher, that type of thing.
Yep.
Whereas steel horns or what are they? Gazelle horns, for example, might reflect more of a playfulness, more of an activity or an action-based person.
Yep.
Someone who's more in the forefront, that type of thing. And then the branches are sometimes an embellishment on that personality. So
Yep.
the dot painting that I've done, for example, the idea around her is that she is confident and strong in who she is,
Yeah.
has acquired wisdom and knowledge in what she does, so that the gold horns are an embellishment of her personality. So she's confident, has that flair, is not afraid to say who she is.
Yep.
And then you've got the interaction between the birds is often reflecting their conflict in that moment,
Yep.
or their state of mind in the present moment. So in this case, the idea of the red bird symbolises the moral balance, so the red and the blue.
Yep.
So the red is a more constant, more balanced presence in her mind, whereas the blue is a bit more active, a bit more unsettled, more to get the attention to say, as you making your decisions, trying to get more attention of what is the right thing
Yep.
to do in how you do things. So so that was the idea, more or less, behind that one. Yeah.
And I guess the good thing about that sort of theory is that as much as people might be able to see what you're saying,
Yeah.
they can obviously pull their own
Yeah.
ideas from that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of embellish on that.
Yeah, and it sort of touches on that surrealism, fantasy sort of aspect as well, that it collages different elements into something that isn't.
I've noticed that a lot of your black and white dripping works, where you've got the women, they're quite often crouched or kind of stuck within the confines of the canvas, like they're trying to break out. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So one of the other things that fascinates me about creating artwork is creating an engagement that extends beyond the canvas.
Yep.
So utilising the wall that the canvas hangs on as, in that case, as a frame that's containing the artwork. So yeah, that was one of the things that I was playing with there, is the way the frame of the canvas can give that dynamic around the artwork and how the subject can interact with that frame.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I started exploring with gold foil as well, is that I wanted an element in there that was ever changing.
Yeah.
So, light will vary constantly, and so there'll be some times that you'll look at that painting and it'll just be flat because there'll be no light bouncing off it, and there'll be other times that you'll look and it's got this glow to it.
Yeah.
So to me that's interesting, that it makes the artwork alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so it's just one of those things that I play around with sometimes, about the frame that the artwork is presented in can change.
Yeah.
So if the subject is interacting with the frame, as the nude drip paintings often did, then where that painting is hung might create a completely different context in how she is interacting with the wall that she's hanging on.
Yeah. So what would you say your philosophy is as an artist or a creative?
I think one of the big things for me is always that art needs to be accessible.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why I create artwork at different price points, in different, whether it be prints or merchandise or originals. Or,
yeah.
Artwork should be accessible for a wider audience, and accessible finance-wise.
Yeah.
And then I also think of artists as a community. So, I think that artists should make time for other artists to help and nurture, the life that is, the art community in various communities. So, being available and offering tips and support and that sort of thing for other artists, or critiquing other artists' work, is sometimes really valuable as well. So I suppose that's my philosophy around how, from my point of view, how the art world should operate.
Yeah.
My, I think, ideal lifestyle is to be in an environment where I'm more in tune with nature and a little bit isolated, so that I can create in a more focused environment.
Yep.
Obviously, without the 9-to-5 office job would be the ideal. And then I would love to travel with my art. So I'd love to exhibit in different countries and get to see other places, be inspired along the way. As you say, it might be an avenue to look at, artist talks and all that sort of jazz as well.
Yeah.
But I think being an artist, for me, it is fluid. It's not a set model. It's something that is changing, will always change.
Yeah.
And I think that if you try and limit yourself to create this sort of work to sell to this sort of audience and this sort of platform, I wouldn't get the enjoyment from that. I see that as limiting in your ability to evolve and grow as an artist. It works for some artists, I know.
To be true to yourself. And
But I just like to experiment with different styles and mediums. So, next year I will focus on a set series and a set style, set medium. But that's not to say that will be the same style that I'll be working in the following year or the year after that. So I've identified that once you develop momentum in a style, it's important to carry that forward and explore that to its full potential.
Yeah.
The challenge is when you're working 9 to 5 and you've got a lot of ideas and different areas that you want to play with, sometimes it's very easy to end up with 6 different paintings and 6 different styles.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, shit, what have I done? Bitten off more than I can chew. So yeah, and that goes back to, again, just having a little
But
bit
I guess
of structure.
it's sort of a positive in a way that you can say that I've got skill set or development in different areas. So if someone was to see a variety of your work now, you've got a fair few drip paintings which identify to you.
Yeah.
And the horns and things tie everything else in together.
Yeah.
If someone sees a work and says, "I'd like something done in on that medium,"
Yep.
Yeah, so I want something that's like that dot image. Can you create a series of works for that? You go, I know I can now.
Yeah.
And therefore you've got that.
Yeah.
So I guess it's about learning stages and things.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the different styles that I work in are always to reflect the different ideas that I'm playing with as well. So your commission, for example, works very well in a drip painting.
Yeah.
Because it communicates that message effectively. It works well to illustrate the both of you within one set frame, basically. Whereas other ideas needed to be more like the dot painting, for example. It sort of almost creates that mosaic appeal to it, and the idea of that personality is she is a little bit self-righteous.
Yeah.
She thinks she's right. She's learnt to do things her way, and she'll probably turn a lot of people off because she's so confident in who she is and the way she does things. So it needed that sort of glamour, refinement.
Juxtaposed against the whole idea that, there's so many layers here.
Yeah.
And a lot more than what people
a lot of
generally
growth and
see.
Development. Yeah, exactly. So part of the experimenting is also to explore different ideas and concepts, but as you say, they're all generally tied in with the horns and the birds and that type of thing. So it'd be really interesting to try and get it to a point where perhaps a background utilises a drip texture, and then the foreground utilises a more refined finish, whether it be a combination of dots with blended or whatever it is, but might be where it's heading. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can always try and fail and try again.
That's right. I like the energy that the drip creates, the drip painting as an underpainting would create really great tonal value to build on as well. So, that would be the other thing that, it could end up being a bit of a hybrid, and probably using the water-based oils would give me more looseness in the paint to actually move it around on there, so you could still get some of the underpainting showing through while giving the tonal value with the colour on top. So it's at the moment that sounds daunting for me to try and create that, because it sounds like a lot of work and a lot of elements that need to cooperate for it to work.
Do a couple of small ones first.
Yeah. But I mean, all of these different styles felt pretty daunting before I got in and did it. So it just goes back to that thing of, if I try and figure it all out in my head beforehand, I'll be waiting a long time before I actually create it. So
I
think,
can
as you say,
stuff.
just jump in, have a go, and see how it comes together. The first one or two might be a fail, and they get whitewashed and turn into something new. So, yeah.
Yes, well, it's been very interesting hearing
Thanks.
everything.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of experience in lots of different areas, and your journey has been obviously it's taken you all over the world, and you can really see from the work that you produce that you've had a lot of time to develop your ideas, and
Yeah,
it's been good.
strangely. Well, you do get that, question, because not everyone is creative, and they say, oh, when do you get time to do all this? And I said, do you watch TV? Do you watch football? Do you watch?
Yeah.
So, well, that's when I'm. No, thanks for the opportunity to
Yeah, it's all right.
to go through the process. It's been a good experience to create work for you while going through the interview concept and
Yeah.
talk about the journey and the stories behind.
Now you begin to see the object of my investigations into the geometry of force.
I hope you enjoyed our chat with Damien and got inspired to take action towards your artistic goals. As an update, since our interview with Damien, he's taken the leap into being a full-time artist, and we wish him the best of luck. Again, thanks for being with us, and as a reminder, leave your comments about the episode on the blog, Twitter or Facebook. Share the podcast by sharing the Twitter or Facebook post for this episode, and if you like what we're doing and you want to get involved, hit us up on the contact page. See you next year.